Well, Danica, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? Who is Danica?
Okay. So hi, I'm Danica. I am 27. I'll be 28 next month, and I am a single mom to Nova. She'll be 8 next month. So obviously with that math, I was a pretty young mom. I just turned 20 a week before I had her. I am a worship leader at Starpoint Church. I am getting my personal trainer certification, so I'm going to
Oh,
be personal trainer at my gym. I'm a full-time medical assistant right now. I wear a lot of hats. I got a lot of things
yeah, me
going on at the
too.
moment,
Busy.
but yeah, very busy, but
So
yeah,
busy.
that's me.
All really cool things.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So why
Yeah.
don't you tell us a little bit about your motherhood journey? So you had Nova when you were 20, you said?
20. Yep, I
Okay.
just turned 20. Our birthdays are a week apart.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
I
yeah,
love
I
that.
just
So
turned 20
Wow.
cute.
years old. I know. Yeah. Um, yeah, so I had her, pretty young, which has its pros and cons. Like now I love it, now that we're a little older and, I'm still at the age where like I can do fun things with her and I can, relate as much as she wants me to. She's
Yeah.
she's too cool for me. But um so yeah, I guess it's hard to like explain without like some sort of like backstory and context. Because I am, so big in my faith and so big I just have a really great relationship with God now. And so you're like, how did you have a baby at 20 years old and now you're a single mom and all these things. So I was like raised in church. I'd always gone to church. That's all I remember. Um like my childhood was great. I never, remember anything like super negative. And then when I was 12, my parents got divorced, which like wasn't as big as it is now, I guess. So it was more like it was like a big thing, it
Yes.
felt like a really big, like heavy thing.
Hmm.
And my dad like cheated on my mom a lot. And I, as a kid, actually, remember telling my mom, like, hey, like dad's bringing all these girls around, like, so that was kind of how my mom found out was by me. So that was like a little traumatizing, I guess.
Mm.
Um, and then after my parents like separated, my dad and I just had like a really strained relationship, and I had always like sought out like a relationship with him, and it never felt like reciprocated. It always kind of felt like he like would choose things over me, would choose like his girlfriends over me or like sports or that's just how I kind of like internalized it like as, a 12-year-old girl. So I think that kind of like started my not my issues, but like my issues, like my traumas and my that's just what I searched for like the rest of my teenage years was
Mm.
like to feel like good enough to feel like somebody would pick me kind of, I guess. Um so like fast forward, we moved to the capital region when I was 18. And then I started a job at a restaurant and I met Nova's dad. And I guess he like gave that to me. He was, the kind of guy that I guess you call it like love bombing now, just he told me he loved me a week into knowing me, and it just felt like, oh my gosh, like this guy like wants me. He like I'm good enough. And so I kind of like fell into that like very hard. Um and like looking back on it now, it's like, wow, that was a lot of red flags. Like that was not the right decision. But I was 19 and I was, a kid just doing kid things, stupid things. And then I got pregnant a month into knowing him. Um, and like my whole pregnancy was great. There was no issues. I thought I was in love and, everything was great. We moved in together. And then I had Nova, and his true colors like showed very, very quickly. He turned very aggressive and very abusive, and it was really, it was not a good situation. So I left 2 months. 2 months. Nova's 2 months old. I went and moved back in with my parents, and that was another type of hard, like being a single mom at 20 years old and trying to figure that out. Nova was not a good baby. She's a great kid now, but she was colicky and cried all the time, and it was so hard. And then I ended up getting back with her dad 6 months later, which I think out of like my whole story, like that was the one thing that I regret doing, was going back, because it was really, really hard to leave again, because I just felt like shame almost, like I put my parents through so much, and I to this day I'm very grateful for them, but they went through a lot too. Um, so that, I guess that was like my only regret, but we were together 2 years. Um, and it was just not good. There was a lot of bad, a lot of bad to it. And I remember very, very vividly, towards the end of our relationship, I like during all this I had fell away from church. I wasn't going hardly ever. I had no relationship with God at all. And my mom dragged me to a bloom. I did not want to go at all. But I went, and I remember the worship leader at the time was singing the song Fear is a Liar. And I like broke down sobbing. I just, had a really, really personal moment with God in that time. And he just told me that I had to stop being scared and I have to leave. And in the next like week or so I did. And that was really, really hard. But I, moved back with my parents again. I was like, hey guys, thanks. Can I go home? And not that, everything has been like great since then. There's, I guess co-parenting with somebody that was like abusive is really hard, because he's
Yeah.
still Nova's dad, but he was the person that like broke me. So that was really difficult. And now we are like 6 years out of that, and thriving, doing good. I mean, there's definitely like ups and downs. There's hard seasons. We're in, a pretty hard season right now, but for the most part, like life has been pretty great. And I'm glad that I went through all of it, because I'm a lot stronger than I was at 19. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
How is Nova's relationship with her dad?
Um, it's okay. So, he moved away almost 3 years ago. He was living here. We were doing 50-50 custody, which was really hard, but she had a great relationship with her dad. And then he got a girlfriend that was from Michigan, so they moved back there together like pretty abruptly. So Nova has seen him like twice in the past 3 years, which
Oh
kind
my
of stinks.
gosh.
Yeah, it kind of
Wow.
stinks for her. But they FaceTime, pretty often. He has other kids, so she has siblings there, which is good and bad. It's hard that she doesn't get to see them, but she does love them a lot, and she loves
She does. She told me all
she
about him.
She is
she
the
does.
Loves
She
sweetest
him.
tells
kid.
everybody. She's
Yeah.
like, I have brothers and a sister, and so
Yeah.
she loves that. Pretty recently, unfortunately, he got into like a bit of a problem with the law. He was abusive with his girlfriend now, and so Nova hasn't talked to him in like a month. He's been in and out of jail, and not in a great spot.
Yeah.
So that's what, like I said, hard season right now, but we push
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good and bad. I think she has a great image of her dad, because I don't talk to her about things like that. Obviously, she doesn't need to. When she's older, she can kind of make decisions for herself, and figure out how she feels about her dad with all of the context. But like right now, she thinks he's great, and that's fine, and I love that for her.
Yeah. Oh,
So
That's
I mean,
amazing that you do that for her because that's
yeah.
hard for
yeah.
you.
It's really hard, when she gets sad that she doesn't get to spend time with him and all these things. And I just have to, keep it to myself, and, daddy might come home one day and hopefully, keep her hopes up sort of thing. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Wow.
amazing that you do that.
Yeah, and it must have been so hard for you, Danica, like going from 50-50 custody to him moving, and then it was all on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very hard. In a way, it's been so much easier
Mhm.
because it was so he continued to kind of use that like manipulation and like abuse with the co-parenting. He would try to keep her from me if he didn't get his way, and everything was a fight. So it was easier because I could just make decisions by myself and not, have to worry about that, and not
Yes.
have to worry about her
Yeah.
when he's at his house. And
Yeah.
so in that way, like, it was a lot easier, but it's hard. It is
Yes.
hard having
Yeah.
her. I love her so much, but being that sole emotional support and financial support and all the things, like, thank God I live with my parents and they're so helpful and so great, but like it's still all on me,
Yeah.
they're just grandparents there to support and help, but like it's on me.
Yeah.
Which is a
Yeah.
privilege, I love it, but it is hard. It's very hard.
How do you
Yeah.
take care of yourself? Like, how do you handle all that?
That's a great question. I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I think sometimes I tend to overload myself just to kind of like distract from all the really hard things. Because I went back to college. I got my degree in medical assisting, and now I'm doing personal training, and I'm on the worship team. So I'm just like busy all the time, which is
Very
which
busy.
is good and bad. So it's almost like a bit of a distraction from
Mm.
like, man, like my life is actually kind of hard. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but I don't have time to like sit and think and like just be sad,
Mhm.
which is good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like when you're ready, you'll fully address it. And like maybe that's just
Yeah,
not the time
for
yet.
sure. I think I'm definitely in a season of just like trying to be really, really strong for Nova. Like, her dad being in jail, like that's not cool to like have to tell people that, so I don't love that that's her reality. So I think I'm trying to like just be super strong and help her through her things.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I feel like very healed. Like, I went through after, the breakup with Nova's dad, like I went through a lot of stuff. Like, I was depressed and I wasn't eating right and like all the things. So it took me probably the last like 2 years I've felt, you know, like I've healed, but I don't know where the switch was. I don't know like what did it, or,
Mm.
where that was, but it
Yeah.
happened
Well,
at some point,
I'm so glad
yeah.
that you had that though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Well, it's so hard to be
Me too.
strong for someone all the time. And like even
It
when
is.
you're feeling sad, still showing up and like putting on that front for your child. That's so
Mhm.
hard. Like as
Yeah,
moms,
So
we have to
hard.
definitely.
do that every day, and especially in your
Every day.
case, you
Mhm.
yeah. And that's exhausting in itself. You like still have to find that time where you can release those emotions
Exactly.
that you have. Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, nobody's perfect. So you do have those moments of like, I bark back at her a little bit and then
Of
I feel
course.
bad. I'm like, oh, it was literally just me like not being able to figure out my own emotions, and I shouldn't have, it wasn't that big of a deal. And
Yeah.
so I do have definitely times where that happens, but
Yeah. Well, we're not perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
And you recognize that, which is so big because,
Yeah,
that's hard to recognize something bad about yourself or something you did that you don't love. That's hard to
exactly.
recognize and
Yeah.
fix that
Yeah.
Like, I do
for
find
sure.
myself like apologizing sometimes to Nova. I'm like,
Same
oh,
girl.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
No.
I think
Same.
that's such a big thing. I mean, I think apologizing teaches them that they can not be perfect and apologize as
Yeah.
well. We're all going to make mistakes. So, yeah.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
do.
Yeah, that's huge. So,
Yeah.
going forward, Danica, like, how do you feel like this affects, like, your relationship with Nova and your relationship with other men, going forward, everything that's happened to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's made my relationship with Nova very real because I've gone through so much, and she, has seen me go through a lot. I'm not always like perfectly strong and like put together. There's been a lot of moments she's seen, stuff that she shouldn't have seen between her dad and I. Like there's been, even when we weren't together, there's been fights and things that she shouldn't have seen. So I think it's kind of, not necessarily to her benefit, but it's made our relationship very real, and we're able to, sit and talk about things, and I can explain to her like how she shouldn't be treated, and how, we're not going to stick up for people in our lives that treat us that way, and like that's not okay. And I think she's seen me kind of come out of that, which I think is really important. So Nova and I are probably a little too close. We're like, very, very close. With other men, I don't know. I don't know. I've like been very, very single for the last 5 or 6 years. I think it's just been very hard to trust people, since then. And I think that's kind of all that I've known, is that like trauma, toxic kind of like behavior. So I'm almost, unfortunately, I had been like drawn to that, which has put me in like situations that weren't great. So the last like 2 years of just like healing and being a better person, like I've just been very shut off. I am like open, to people, but it has to be like the right type of person, for sure. That would, because it's not just me too, it's you're coming in and being a father figure to Nova, especially because her dad's not here. It's even like bigger of a deal, and like a lot of pressure to put on somebody. So I don't take it lightly, definitely.
The right person will come along, and I feel like you're doing that inside work to like be ready for it, and that's huge.
Exactly.
So what advice can you give, to women out there that might be in the same situation, whether it's like domestic abuse or, being a single mom, anything like that?
I don't know. I have like a lot of advice for people, because it's, it's hard. You don't know how hard it is until you're in it. You always see these women that are in abusive relationships and they don't leave, and you're like, come on, like, why wouldn't you just leave? This stuff is going on, it's wrong. Why wouldn't you just leave? And then I was in it for way too long, and I guess I would just tell women that like it's scary. It's probably the hardest thing that you will do, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it once you're on the other side and you're done with the feeling like you're walking on eggshells every day and you don't know what the next day is going to bring you. Like it's so worth it, and it's so like it's okay to not like always be okay, and not fully be healed, but it's so worth it. So
what resources and support did you use like getting out of the relationship?
I mean, I didn't really. I know there are. I think it was hard in my situation because it wasn't necessarily like the telltale like cookie cutter like abuse. It was more of the like emotional abuse and like narcissism and that stuff. I don't think I really necessarily realized that it was abuse until afterwards, and after I started talking about it to people. And I have friends, that are like therapists, and friends that like have those resources, and they're like, wait, no, you were actually like, that was abuse. That was not okay. Just because he didn't hit you, he hit the wall next to you, you were still abused. So I don't think I like sought out those resources because I didn't realize what I had went through. The church was great. The church really, helped me find my way. My mom was like my biggest resource. That poor woman, she went through so much with me. I cried so many times to her, and she has always been there. So I think she was like my biggest
Your biggest support.
Absolutely.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
So lean on your family no matter what you're feeling, even if you're feeling that shame or.
Yeah, I think that was a hard part too, because I had already left once and they'd already been through all this stuff with me. I didn't want to do that to them again, but my mom always says like it's not a burden. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a burden on you. She's like, it's not a burden. you're my daughter. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh yeah, I would do that for Nova. It's not,
Yeah.
that's just what you do as a mom.
Yeah.
So
And you put it in that perspective, though. It's so true. Like, I
exactly.
sometimes feel like that, but if I think about my kids, I'm like, I would literally do anything,
Mhm.
anything
Exactly.
for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you
So
so much.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of women out there
Mm.
are going through stuff like this. So this is so, so great to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
How do you
amazing.
feel? Better now? I know you were nervous.
Yes, I feel better. I was so nervous because it's like, I don't share my story that often because it's like heavy and it's a lot, but I think it is important to speak out and let people know, like, even faces that you see on the stage at church, like, we've been, through a lot, and
Yeah.
you overcome it and you do better.
Yeah. Everyone has a
Yeah.
story. And Nova is
Yeah.
such a great kid. I'm like obsessed with
She's
I
her.
so
know.
She's so
great.
cute.
You're doing all the
Good.
things
Yeah.
right with that one.
Yeah.
Thank
She's
you.
You are.
I'm
amazing.
trying.
You're
Amazing.
killing it too.
Yeah.
She's a good one. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Really.
Danica. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
of
it.
course. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Awesome.
Have
All
a good
right.
day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.